In today's video, we're going to be listening to the difference in tonality, if there's a difference at all, between the stock Trem Claw that is on the Squier right now versus an aftermarket product from the people over at Apollo Music Parts. The idea is that the Apollo Music Parts has a brass Trem Claw, which is really thick, and with the design that they have, this is supposed to augment the sustain from the Strat. So the way we're doing it today is that the trem block is the original one, so it's a little thin, tiny one. So I do have some sustain just because I usually deck the bridge here and I just bring those trem claws as far as I can go. So this doesn't move anymore and it's flat with the body. So I thought maybe I should change the trem block as well, but I don't want to do that. I'm so used to how everything sounds, and you know, it's the same pickups, same strings, like nothing has changed here. I'm just removing the trem claw and putting in the new one. What I did in order to make this video happen is that I've taken a DI box, which is this one here. I've taken the DI box, I've recorded something super simple. I had a click track so that everything gets picked at the same speed. I used a very thin, like super thin guitar pick. That way, even if I hit hard, I'm not going beyond the capacity of this really thin pick, because I tried it with thicker ones and I had volumes all over the place. And this one here is almost like a compressor, like everything seems to balance out. So that's what I used. Like I said, it's the same pickup height, everything's the same. I haven't changed anything but the trem claw in the back. I'm also going to show you the process of how you change this trem claw, because it's not as simple as just unscrewing, putting it in, and then screwing it back. There's a few things, it's not very complicated at all, but just so that you know how to install it yourself. And what we're gonna do is listen to some DI tracks. I'm gonna be playing the same thing. We're gonna compare AB with the original one and the aftermarket one. We're gonna have a compressor to see how much sustain we have. There's gonna be some gain, and we're gonna try just a single note with a fuzz and see how it rings out. It's always the same matching pickup combination, so there's no, like, on one example I'm doing one thing with the bridge and the other with the neck. I've matched everything. So this is as scientifically accurate as I can get it. Let me know what you think. We're going to see the waveform on screen. I'm going to also have a little clock so that we can see how long the notes sustain for. And there's also a spectrum analyzer so that we can look if there's any difference in harmonics. I think there is, and I don't think my eyes are fooling me when I'm looking at the spectrum analyzer. You can let me know what you think. Of course, how you pick can sometimes change how you perceive everything, but everything was picked between this pickup and that one, and as close to the edge of this pickup, just so I had a point of reference. So it's not like I'm picking here on one and then picking over there on the other. They're all being picked in the exact same spot. So I do think there's a difference, but let's go have a listen to the video. We'll come back at the end and I'm gonna tell you what I think. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps me determine which videos you want to watch. And if you like this kind of content, please subscribe. It always helps this little channel grow into something bigger and reach more people. If you do, thank you so much for your support. Now this is going to be pretty simple. I went over the whole thing with Remco from Apollo Music Parts. He walked me through it just so I didn't make any mistakes. So over here we have 6 poles. This is going to be for the springs that are connected to your trem block. The loop part ends up going in here. Once that is secured, you use this part here. It's got indentations that match these poles. You put it this way, and you notice the groove here on top. That's so that the wood screw that connects the trem claw to the body can go in, because if you put it the other way, then it's not going to work. So you're going to notice these 2 grooves. That is top side. So we put these in, and once your springs are all connected, just use these 2 screws, clamp everything down. You don't need to go super hard. It just needs to be secured and not moving. Once you have this done, you will notice there is a screw right here in the middle. That is where the ground wire comes to connect to the trem claw. Quite easy. You just unscrew this a bit so there's some room to wrap the cable around, and then you screw it back in. And you don't have to force it too hard. You just need to have solid contact. And over here on top, you're going to notice there are 2 screws. And if we look at the opening here, you're going to notice that they come down into this opening. And this is so that these little guys can connect with the wood screws, which is giving you even more vibration and contact from the bridge. So usually the wood screw goes in here, but it doesn't necessarily always touch the bridge. This way, these guys can come down, connect to the wood screws, and transfer even more vibration, or at least that's the science behind it. Now, if you find that these poke out of the body too much, depending on the depth of your instrument, if you find that these are too high, you have some black ones that are provided that don't have the top part. So they can go in and they end up being flush with the trem claw. So you're going to see that in the B-rolls that I'm going to be showing you here on screen. So you have a choice of the 2 screws, but they're the same size and they perform the same function. And that is about it. So here's my Strat in its current state. So this is the very thin original block that came with the Squier. I decided to put all the springs on here so that the trem did not move whatsoever. We have the 2 wood screws. We have the trem claw. This is the hard soldered ground cable to the trem claw. And then we see the loop going over here. So they call it a claw because it just looks basically like this, right? Now what I'm going to do is undo everything. What I was told to do is to put some masking tape over here and draw a line to where I was with this specific setting, because this way it's easier for me to set it up exactly the same way so the bridge doesn't move. So basically I'm going to put tape, I'm going to put markings on where exactly the trem claw is ending up, and it's at a bit of an angle. So I'm going to be replicating this, putting in the new trem claw, and then we're going to do the comparison. All right, so now I'm going to be installing the claw on my guitar, but what I need to do first, obviously, is to release the tension from the strings. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll flip the guitar over and start the install. Alright, so I have the springs off. All I need to do now is wait for the soldering iron to be hot enough so I can unsolder this from this trem claw. And then what I'm going to do is just bring them over into my kitchen. I'm going to go see how much each weigh, just to see what the difference in mass is between this one and the other. I'm obviously expecting this one to be much heavier and more dense than this. I'm gonna wager something around maybe like 53 gram, and maybe this is like 12 gram. I'm not sure, but we'll see. All right, so now we're gonna be weighing each trem claw. So this one is 13 grams. How about the new one? 65 grams. So 13 and 65. Now what I want to do is get these springs on here. All right, so now I'm mounting these screws here. So they are coming down and clamping on the springs. That way they won't move, they won't pop out. So I'm not going too hard, I'm just making it snug. You'll feel when it reached its capacity. So basically this new part here, there's a groove underneath that's just thick enough to give room so that the springs, that loop part, can just sit underneath, and this just clamps down on it. So now over here, I'm not going to use these screws or else they're going to poke out, because I keep an open back and I don't want the screws to always like scratch on my shirts. So right now this guy can move just a little bit this way, so I have it the same way. This guy just a little bit, and there we go. So that is set. These aren't going to be moving from there. And right now what I can see is, because this is clamping down, that means that you're getting more contact between this piece, the loop part of the spring, and the bottom of the trem claw. And now to get more sustain by getting the screw to connect with these wood screws that connect into the guitar and also get contact with the bridge, I'm gonna go get the part I'm missing, and I'm gonna be right back. So those are the screws that are gonna come in here and replace these guys. So basically the head on these is just giving you like a millimeter more, and I don't want these to hook onto my shirts. If you have a sausage of fingers, you may be a bit irate with this part of the process, but well worth it. Just take a good shower when you're done, and you should be all set. Okay, so the one mistake I made here is the little black screws that go in here. I put one of them backwards, and when you do that, you cannot use the little Allen keys because at the bottom there's no hole. So I had to use tweezers to get it out. So just don't make the same mistake as me. I make a lot of mistakes when I do these things. So yeah, I'm no guitar tech, that is for sure. So what I'm going to do here is back this bridge up, connect the soldering, not the soldering, but the ground, and then I will adjust it back to where it was. So according to what Remco told me is that I don't actually need to solder physically onto the trem claw. So if that's the case, that means that just having good contact between the end of this cable here, so the metal part, with this, as long as the screw can tighten on it, I should have a solid connection. I don't have a wire stripper on hand at the moment, so I'm going to go old school and just get some of it off. I don't want to take too much off, but that should be good. So if this comes back here like this,
so here's the lowdown on this experiment. First, I really thought about how to do this properly without fooling myself into hearing something. So I'm trying to use some science to really back this up, but there's some stuff that's more layman. The picking, you know, it's like I'm using a thin pick, as I mentioned before, because I find that even though I might want to dig louder, the pick only has a certain capacity to hit the notes a certain way. So it doesn't fluctuate as loudly as, let's say, a much denser pick. So by using this, it seems to keep the notes more consistent. I also used a plugin to normalize the audio. What that means is that sometimes you can record and there might be peaks that are louder than the other. So by normalizing both examples of the audio tracks are at the same level. So there's not one louder than the other, which might fool you into thinking that one is better. Also, I did my best with a click track to follow a certain speed so that the rhythm was the same. The pick placement, I chose a very specific spot and I picked it precisely there because we both know that if you change the position of the pick, you can change the frequency a bit, being more muffled or brighter. So I had a reference point there. And then I used the DI track so that we get exactly what comes out of the instrument with compression, a bit of gain, and some fuzz. We get to elongate, if you will, the sustain, and we get to see which one, sustains longer. My verdict is that there really is something to the Trem Claw. Now, it's not like a night and day difference. You notice that there's more sustain. You can feel in the resonance of the guitar that there's a bit more sustain, which now leads me to want to change the trem block to something that is a little denser than the one I have here. So I figure with this Trem Claw, a new trem block, this guitar is gonna ring like hell because right now, acoustically speaking, it's doing pretty damn good. I've had some Strats that are way more expensive than this and they sounded like cardboard. They had no sustain whatsoever. Once amplified, they did, but acoustically, they did not resonate. That's why I did it the way I did, so that you could see the spectrum analyzer, you could see the harmonic content generated with the original Trem Claw in this new Trem Claw. And I wanted you to see how easy it is to do. It's an easy mod. You add just a bit more sustain, and I find there's a zing in the notes. There's this, I don't know how to explain zing. You probably know what I mean. It's just this high-end content that seems to be like added on top now that really gets the notes, like especially the higher notes, to be just a little brighter and more piercing, but not like in an annoying way, if you will. It just seems to give it just a bit more character. And I could actually see some spikes in the high end that seem to confirm what I'm talking about. So I don't know what you think. I'm not trying to convince you either way. I see maybe like a 20% difference in the sustain. I'm hearing, I don't know what percentage I would give to what I'm hearing sonically, but there is a remarkable difference. It feels like there's a little bit more clarity in the high end with this particular Trem Claw. Very interesting. I did not expect that. Remco hasn't lied to me before. Didn't expect them to lie to me now, but I was just a little skeptical, I would say, of how much that one piece could actually do to the tone, the sustain, and even some of the harmonics that you hear in the high end. Like I said, more zingy. So I don't know. Let me know what you think. Of course, I hope that you are listening to this with a proper set of headphones or some good studio monitors, because if you're just listening on the phone, you're probably going to miss out on a lot of that sonic information. So let me know what you think. And in the meantime, if you enjoy this, I also have another video with Apollo music parts where I changed the bridge on my Telecaster and put a B and G bender on the Telly. So if you're interested in that, click over here and I'm going to see you in the next one. Cheers.